Imagine you are a young girl living in Edo, Japan, a busy city filled with tea shops, rice sellers, wandering monks, and people who think they're ancient warriors. As a girl, your future is already limited. You can either marry someone boring, become a nun and live a quiet life, or join a special house called a nokia, where girls are trained to become geishas. A geisha is someone who entertains guests through music, dance, and conversation. It sounds fancy, but the path to becoming one is very hard. You are only 6 years old, still playing with bugs and thinking the world is full of snacks and naps. But today is different. You're wearing your best kimono, which is stiff and itchy, and your parents are walking you through the streets. You don't know it yet, but they've already decided your future. You are going to live in an okiya and train to become a geisha. When you arrive, an older woman opens the door. She is called Okasan, or house mother. She doesn't smile. She just looks at how you bow and can already tell your worth. Your parents bow deeply, speak politely, and then leave. Just like that. You are no longer with your family. You are not adopted. You are now part of the house, but more like a servant than a daughter. You belong to them. You begin your training as a shikomi, a young trainee who mostly does chores. You scrub the floors, carry water, prepare baths, and sometimes cry quietly into your sleeve. You watch the geisha float by in beautiful clothes. They don't speak to you. You sleep in the hallway, eat after everyone else, and owe the house money for even the rice you eat. Geishas look like magic. Their hair is perfect, their footsteps silent. They barely notice you, but you are always watching and learning. You start your day before the sun comes up and keep going until your back hurts. You clean, carry things, and move quietly. You can't speak unless someone talks to you first, and even then, your answer must be polite and just the right speed, not too slow, not too fast. You must even be careful with how you blink. There are no classrooms here. You learn by watching, copying, and doing the same things over and over until they're perfect. You fold cloth, practice pouring tea without spilling, and bow until your back aches. You see how the geisha laugh at the perfect moment, walk with tiny steps, and hold their fans just right. Being a geisha is not just about looking pretty. It's about control, grace, and perfect timing. Even though you are still a shikomi and not yet important, you keep going. Everyone starts where you are. Even the most graceful geisha once scrubbed floors. You learn that the pain and hard work are part of the journey. You keep your head down and your ears open, waiting for the day you will be seen. After a while, your duties change. Now you have to learn how to sit still without moving for hours. This is called posture training. You kneel in a way called seiza, where your legs are tucked under you and your back is straight. It hurts. First your legs go numb, then they scream in pain, but you cannot move. Geishas must be graceful, and wiggling is not graceful. You also learn how to bow in many different ways. There's a bow for saying hello, one for thank you, another for sorry, and one for please don't be mad at me. You must bow at the perfect angle. Hold it just long enough and rise smoothly. If you mess up, someone will scold you gently, but firmly. You also learn to move slowly and with purpose, especially during tea ceremonies. Everything is supposed to look beautiful and calm, even if your body is in pain. But something changes during all of this. Slowly, you start to feel different. You hold your head higher. You move more quietly. You are no longer a child. You are becoming something else, someone who can control how others see you. This training is not just about beauty. It's about turning into a person who can disappear and reappear in the most elegant way. Finally, after years of hard work, you hear the words you've been waiting for. You are ready to become a Mako, an apprentice geisha. This is like being promoted from invisible servant to a young lady of beauty and tradition. But the hard part isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. Your hair will now be styled by professionals who twist and shape it into tall designs. It takes hours and uses wax and pins. You can't sleep on a pillow anymore. You must use a wooden neck rest called a takamakura so your hair doesn't get ruined. Sleeping becomes a challenge, but you get used to it. Then comes the kimono. It's heavy, long, and beautiful. It takes 2 or 3 people to help you wear it. The sleeves are long enough to sweep the floor, and the sash, called an obi, is tied high on your back. It weighs as much as a small child. Dressing up becomes a daily challenge. You also wear special hair ornaments called kanzashi. These are sharp, colorful, and tell everyone what stage of training you are in. Wearing the wrong one could cause you great shame. As a Mako, you are still learning. You watch, copy, and serve tea while wearing your fancy kimono. You don't speak freely. You don't ask questions. You are there to be seen, not heard. But now, people notice you, not just because your clothes are bright, but because you've become part of the performance. Your big debut as a Mako is called a Mizudashi. It's a formal event where you show your skills to the elite in Kyoto. You wear your most beautiful kimono with your face painted white. Only your bottom lip is painted red because full lips are for senior geishas. You wear tall wooden sandals called okobo, which are hard to walk in, and everyone watches as you walk slowly and gracefully. You meet clients for the first time, bow perfectly, pour tea without spilling, and smile at the right moments. Every move you make is being judged, but you do it. You make it through without mistakes, and now, you are officially a Mako half-girl, half-living artwork. As a Mako, one of the most important things you must learn is how to create the perfect geisha face. This isn't just makeup. It's like putting on a mask that turns you into someone else, someone graceful, powerful, and unforgettable. It starts with white powder. You cover your face, neck, and chest with a thick layer of white rice powder. It smells strange, feels sticky, and dries fast like glue. Once it's on, you no longer look like a girl. You look like a doll from another world. This face tells people you are not ordinary. You are part of a tradition. Next, your eyebrows. You can't use your real ones that are covered by the white powder, so you draw new ones using charcoal. They are thin and serious, like they know secrets. Then your eyes. You use tiny brushes to paint red and black lines around them. This takes great focus. One small mistake, and you can go from elegant to looking like a tired raccoon. Now your lips. As a beginner Mako, you're only allowed to paint the bottom lip red. Why? It's tradition. It shows you're still learning. A full red mouth comes later, once you've earned it. You shape your bottom lip into a small bow. It looks pretty, but it makes eating very hard. Everything must be perfect. If you smudge your lip, you start over. If one eye line is crooked, it's unacceptable. And remember, this is all done with old tools, powders, brushes, even some made from natural materials mixed with water or spit. You don't get fancy modern makeup. You use what geishas have used for hundreds of years. When you finish and look in the mirror, it's like seeing a stranger, a white, shining, fragile version of yourself. But under that mask, something powerful is growing. You are learning how to become someone who gets noticed just by walking into a room. This makeup isn't for fun. It's not for beauty. It's armor. It shows the world that you are special, different, and meant to perform, not to be approached casually. It helps you hide your tiredness, your fears, and your youth. Under that perfect face, you are still a teenager, but with it, you become art. As you continue your training, you learn that makeup and clothing are just the surface. The real skills lie deeper. One of the most important is learning how to play the shamisen, a 3-stringed instrument that looks like a flat wooden paddle. It sounds like a mix between a banjo and a sagcat. At first, the noise is terrible, but with time, you learn to play real music. Practicing the shamisen is hard. Your fingers get sore. Your teacher is strict. One mistake, and they sigh. 2 mistakes, and you get a look. 3 mistakes, you're sent back to practice alone until you get it right. Slowly, your sounds start to improve. One day, you play a piece that sounds almost beautiful. That's when you realize this isn't just music. It's part of the performance. But being a geisha isn't only about music. You also have to master conversation, and not just regular talking. You must learn to say things in a clever, gentle way. You must know how to make people feel interesting, even if they're not. You learn how to flatter someone without lying, how to listen without really agreeing, and how to steer a conversation without them noticing. This is a skill, a powerful one. If a man brags about being rich, you smile and talk about the move. If he flirts too much, you comment on his nice sandals and pour more tea. You are always in control, but softly, quietly. You also memorize poems, lots of them. Some are about love, some about nature, some about sadness. You can recite them while serving tea and still notice who's had too much to drink. You always keep your back straight and your voice soft. You are like a calm ocean hiding a strong current underneath. Being a Mako is not just about making others happy. It's about managing their emotions, your own feelings, and the whole room. You learn to read faces faster than you read books. You know when to laugh, when to stay silent, and when to pretend you didn't hear something inappropriate. You become part performer, part therapist, and part magician. And the strangest thing is you start getting really good at it. Then comes the Dana. A Dana is a rich man who supports you financially. This isn't love. It's business. He pays for your clothes, your training, and sometimes even your living costs. In return, you spend time with him, entertain him, and treat him with great respect. You don't get to pick your Dana. The Okia chooses him for you based on money and status. Some Dana are kind and care about the arts. Others expect too much. There are unspoken rules. You're supposed to smile, pour tea, and make him feel important even if he's old, boring, or unpleasant. You owe your house money. You owe your future. You owe the pain in your knees from sitting alone. And so, you smile. You balance your emotions like a tightrope walker. You keep your distance with grace. Sometimes it works out. The Dana might help you for years without asking for too much. Other times, you learn to daydream while he talks about grain taxes for hours. Either way, it's a game of power, and you must play it carefully. One day, you're given a pair of sandals called okobo. They are like tall blocks of wood with straps. They are beautiful, but terrible to wear. Walking in them is hard. You wobble, you trip, you suffer, but they make you taller and more elegant. The sound of them clop, clop, clop announces that a Mako is walking nearby. Everyone hears it. Everyone turns to look. At first, your feet hurt, your balance is bad, you feel silly, but over time, your legs get stronger and your walk becomes smooth. You glide through the streets like you're floating. When it rains, the danger doubles. Wet stones and tall shoes do not mix well, but you learn to move with grace no matter what. That's what being a geisha means, enduring with beauty. Eventually, you'll be allowed to wear flatter shoes, but not yet, for now. Every painful step reminds the world and yourself that you are still learning. It's time to clear up a big misunderstanding. A geisha is not what many people in the West think. A geisha is an artist, an entertainer, a person trained in music, dance, conversation, and elegance. A geisha performs. She does not sell affection or romance. That job belongs to courtesans, known in Japan as orin. Courtesans may also dress beautifully, but their work is different. A geisha's job is to create an atmosphere, not to fulfill desire. Still, many people confuse the two. The outfits don't help. Both wear fancy kimonos. Both have intricate hairstyles and walk with grace. But there's an easy way to tell the difference. Look at the obi, the wide belt that ties the kimono. If it's tied in the front, she's a courtesan. If it's tied in the back, she's a geisha. The front tie means quick access. The back tie means slow, controlled exit. That's your cheat code. But even if you know the difference, many guests at tea houses don't. Some think geisha is just a pretty word for a companion. They watch a movie or hear a rumor and assume the wrong things. So, you learn a skill one that every geisha must master: the art of politely correcting someone while making them feel smart. If someone says something wrong, you don't scold, you don't snap. You smile and say, "Oh, how kind of you to." Be curious. Our traditions are a little different from that. Then you sip your tea, change the subject, and keep the mood calm. You will have this exact conversation 100 times. It never really stops. But every time you do it with grace, you protect your art and your name. Another important skill: saying no without ever saying the word no. Geishas cannot be direct. A blunt rejection is seen as rude or unfeminine, but you still have to set boundaries, especially when guests get too bold. Maybe someone leans into close or hints at something inappropriate. You can't shout or walk out. That would break the illusion. Instead, you use deflection soft words that sound polite, but really mean stop. If someone says, "Shall we meet in private sometime?" you don't say no. You tilt your head, smile gently, and say, you must be very popular with women. It flatters them, redirects the conversation, and buys you time. Another trick: "Oh, what a shame. I'm terribly busy that day." This works even if they haven't picked a day. You are always busy, because a geisha's schedule is mysterious and sacred. Laughter is another tool: a soft chuckle, little shake of the head, and a new topic. That's all it takes to move the moment along without trouble. You become a master at this dance, leading people away from bad behavior without them even knowing. It's hard work, exhausting even, but it's also powerful. You can turn down 100 offers and still make someone feel like they've won a prize. That's the hidden strength of a geisha. Not brute force, not loud words, just elegance, charm, and emotional control. Now, let's talk about life inside. The Okiya, the geisha house, from the outside. It looks peaceful: paper walls, soft music, and women moving quietly like wind and silk. But inside, it's a battlefield. Not with swords, but with looks, whispers, and strategy. It's a house full of smart, talented women trained to compete without ever raising their voices. Everything matters. If another Mako wears the same seasonal hair ornament as you, it's war. If your solo dance gets reassigned to a more popular girl, it's not a mistake, it's a message. Did someone borrow your obi without asking? That's not borrowing. That's a silent challenge. You learn quickly. Not all smiles are friendly. Not all compliments are real. Never leave your makeup unattended. There's a code to these silent fights. You don't yell. You don't confront. Instead, revenge is served like tea, graceful and cold. Maybe you drop an extra syllable in a poem just to throw someone off. Maybe you casually mention a rumor you heard about another Mako at the last tea event. You smile while you do it. That's the rule. Gossip spreads fast in the Okiya. A careless word can change your career. Maybe your dance was too good. Maybe you got too much attention. Suddenly, your sandals go missing. Coincidence? Probably not. You learn to fight with words that sound kind. You say, "Your kimono is so bold. I could never wear something so daring." It sounds like praise. It's not. It's a warning. Eventually, you rise above it. As a full geisha, you outrank the apprentices. You get your own room. You have your own clients. Fewer accidents happen around your outfit. But until then, you're stuck in the middle of fan wars, silent, sharp, and ruled by perfectly timed eyebrow raises. After years of practice, kneeling, and smiling through everything, the day finally comes. You are no longer a Mako. You are a geisha. There's no parade, no cheering crowd. You simply wake up one day, and you're the standard that others now look up to. Your wardrobe changes. You no longer wear the bright, flower-like kimonos of a Mako. Now your clothing is simpler, more elegant. You've earned the right to look like a grown woman. And your hair, finally, you don't have to sleep with wax. Sculptures on your head. You wear a wig now. It's heavy, yes, still hard to style. But you can sleep like a normal person again, a luxury after all these years. But the biggest change, you now perform alone. No one leads you. You lead. You are the star now. You must host guests, entertain them, and keep everything flowing with charm and control. Your shamisen solos are longer. Your conversations are sharper. Clients don't see you as cute anymore. They see you as powerful, not in a loud way, but in the way that a raised eyebrow can silence a whole room. You have mastered the art of presence. You don't speak often, but when you do, people listen. That's the secret of a true geisha. Power and silence. Now, new responsibilities appear. You must mentor younger Mako. You must continue to smile at clients you've seen 100 times. You must carry the weight of tradition on your shoulders. But something has changed deep inside. You're no longer pretending. You become the person they trained you to be. You're not just a woman in a kimono. You are a symbol, a mystery, a walking performance with perfect posture and an unreadable smile. You are a geisha now. After everything, the training, the pain, the rituals, and the performances, you finally reached the top. You are a geisha. But now comes the quiet part of your story. What happens after? There's a secret that no one tells you at the start. Geisha don't really retire. There's no ceremony, no goodbye party, no golden fan and flowers. You don't get a retirement package. You simply fade away, like a candle burning slowly until it finally goes out. Some geisha become teachers. They correct the bowing posture of nervous Mako with just a look. They teach shamisen for the 100th time, knowing the student is already thinking about lunch. They are calm, patient, and respected. They are proof that grace doesn't age, it just deepens. Others become Okasa and the geisha house mothers. Yes, that same sharp-eyed woman who once judged your bow now becomes your new role model. And maybe, one day, it's you standing at the door, watching the next 6-year-old girl arrive in a two-day kimono, full of hope and fear. You decide who cleans the floors and who's ready to serve tea. You make the rules. You protect the house. You carry the weight of tradition and teach others how to carry it too. Some geisha get married, quietly, carefully. Maybe even to a former Dana patron who is still around and has the good sense not to ask how much everything really costs. Marriage is just another kind of performance. Now your role is wife, and you must play that part just as gracefully. Many geisha keep working, just more slowly, They perform at smaller events, more intimate tea gatherings. They speak less, but when they do, their words carry meaning. They don't dance as often, but when they do, it still captures everyone's attention. They become presence itself, soft, elegant, and unforgettable. There's no big moment when people stop calling you. It just gets quieter. The invitations slow down. The crowds get smaller. But that's okay, because now, your name lives on in another way. You become a legacy. The younger geishas still tell stories about you. They copy your movements. They wear their kimono the way you used to, even if they never met you. They feel your influence in the quiet way a fan opens, in the tilt of a head during a bow, in the hush that falls when someone enters a room with elegance. Your body is different. Now, your knees ache from all the years kneeling on tatami mats. Your back is always straight, even when you're tired. Your voice is soft and musical, but it holds power. Not because it's loud, but because it doesn't need to be. You don't need your name in a textbook or a statue in a museum. You don't need to trend on social media. You don't need applause, because your legacy lives in the details, the quiet grace, the perfect smile, the art of doing just enough and never more. You trained for decades to become unforgettable in ways that people can't describe, and you succeeded. A new story begins to know. Let's look at a different time and place ancient summer, over 4,000 years ago, in what is now Iraq. The story shifts from geishas and kimonos to contracts written in clay, but once again, we are talking about women, tradition, and expectations. In summer, marriage wasn't about love, it was about order. The Sumerians were the first known civilization to create written marriage contracts. They used sticks to press symbols into soft clay tablets. These tablets listed what each person brought to the marriage: livestock, land, servants, textiles. Love was not listed. Romance was optional. The roles were not. The bride brought a dowry. The groom's family might give a bride price, basically a security deposit for the union. If the marriage ended, the tablet explained exactly who got what. These were prenups. Thousands of years before lawyers, Sumerian marriage wasn't about candlelight or emotion. It was about keeping society working. Women had to be loyal and fertile. Men had to provide and protect. If a woman cheated, the punishment could be death by drowning. Divorce was allowed, but only if you had a very good reason. We grew apart wouldn't count. Weddings were small. No white dresses or flower girls. No dancing. The couple moved, and together, performed a few rituals. Maybe said a prayer to a god like Inanna or Enlil. The real marriage began when the community said it was real land when the contract was filed. Like an ancient tax form. In summer, marriage was a duty, not a dream. It was a way to build families, control land, and pass on wealth. Your spouse was not your soulmate, they were your teammate, your business partner, your family's best strategy for survival. From clay to sand. Egypt's version of marriage. Next, we traveled to ancient Egypt, where the gods themselves were. Married Isis and Osiris, Nut and Geb, even chaos had a match. Egyptians believed that balance in the universe was kept by divine couples. Human marriages were expected to do the same. Marriage was seen as the perfect state for a person. Men married young, often before they got into trouble. Women married in their early teens. While love wasn't required, affection and companionship were still valued. Egyptian poetry even included sweet lines like, "My heart flutters when I think of you," or "She stole my heart with her hair." It wasn't fiery passion, but it was real emotion. Marriage contracts were common, especially for wealthy families. These listed who owned what, who got what in divorce, and how the dowry worked. But unlike the Sumerians, Egyptian women had legal rights. They could own property, file for divorce, and even sue their husbands if they didn't provide bread, beer, or oil. That's right, no oil, and you could take him to court. Royal families often married siblings, not because they had no one else, but to copy the gods. Isis married her brother, so pharaohs did too. They wanted to keep the bloodline divine, even if it came with, let's say, genetic risks. Weddings weren't big shows. If a couple moved in together, shared food, and were seen as husband and wife, that was enough. There was no priest, no party, no white dress. The gods didn't need fanfare, and neither did Egyptians. The goal was clear: children. If your wife couldn't have kids, you might marry another woman or take a concubine. Love wasn't the goal. A healthy bloodline was. Now, let's look at how marriage worked in ancient Sparta, one of the fiercest societies in history. Sparta wasn't about romance. It was about survival, strength and making future warriors. If Sumerians saw marriage as a business and Egyptians saw it as divine balance, the Spartans saw it as a military mission. Boys in Sparta were taken from their families at age 7. They trained in a harsh system called the agage, learning to fight, survive, and obey. They could eat roots, sleep on the ground, and battle with almost anything. Girls trained too, not just in housework, but in sports, wrestling, and javelin throwing. The goal? To make strong babies for Sparta. Men didn't marry until around age 30. Women married in their teens. The ceremony was strange. The bride's head was shaved, and she was dressed in a man's cloak and sandals. She waited in a dark room. The groom would sneak in at night, spend time with her, then sneak back to his barracks by morning. Even after marriage, men lived with other men. It was believed that too much time with women made soldiers soft. Their whole relationship was built on short, mysterious visits. The less you saw each other, the more desire would grow, or so the Spartans believed. Despite all this, Spartan women had power. They could own land, manage homes, and speak freely. One famous Spartan woman told her husband going to war, "Come back with your shield door on it. That means win or die trying." That was love. Spartan-style.next, we moved to ancient India, where marriage was more than tradition. It was a spiritual duty guided by dharma, or cosmic law. Marriage wasn't just between the people. It joined into families, to lineages, and sometimes to villages. It was one of the key milestones in life, a samskara, or sacred passage. Arranged marriages were the norm. Parents didn't just match personalities, they consulted astrologers, checking the stars and planets to make sure the couple's fate was in harmony. A good match didn't just bring happiness, it brought prosperity to everyone involved. The wedding ceremony was deeply symbolic. At the center was the sacred fire. The couple walked around it 7 times, each step representing a vow to feed each other, to grow strong together, to share wealth, to stay righteous, to raise children, to enjoy life seasons, to be together forever. These steps were called the Saptapadi. And once completed, the two were joined spiritually. The wife was called Dharmapatni, meaning partner in duty. She kept the household running, took care of rituals, and helped keep the family spiritually pure. The husband protected, earned, and guided the family. Polygamy existed among kings and nobles, but monogamy was considered the ideal for most people. Widows were expected to live simply and avoid remarriage, although this changed depending on the time and region. One practice, called sati, where a widow would throw herself on her husband's funeral fire, was rare in ancient times. It came later and was not part of original Vedic beliefs. In India, marriage wasn't about falling in love. It was about duty, family, and eternal connection. A wedding was a holy ritual, not a party, and every role, from the astrologer to the fire god, had meaning. Now let's visit ancient China, where marriage was shaped by Confucian rules, ancestral worship, and family loyalty. Love was not the goal. Duty was everything. You didn't marry to be happy. You married to honor your family and continue your bloodline. The most important job of a son was to have male children. Without sons, ancestors would not be honored properly, and the family's spiritual link would break. So having a family was not just personal, it was cosmic. Young people didn't choose their partners. Matchmakers were hired to handle everything. They checked family history, wealth, and most importantly, astrology. The stars had to agree before a wedding could happen. There were 6 official steps in a traditional Chinese marriage: proposal, name exchange, fortune-telling, gift exchange, choosing the date. The wedding ceremony step involved rituals, gifts, and long letters between families. Sometimes it took years to complete. On the wedding day, the bride wore red, the lucky color. She sat in a fancy sedan chair and was carried to the groom's house. Her face was veiled. She didn't speak. She was supposed to be quiet and respectful. When she arrived, the couple bowed 3 times, once to heaven and earth, once to the presence, to each other. This showed the order of importance: universe first, then family, then the couple themselves. After marriage, the wife lived with the husband's family and obeyed his parents. Her job was to bear sons, manage the house, and serve quietly. Some women gained respect over time, especially as mothers or elders, but they were still part of a strict male-dominated world. A man could divorce his wife for disobedience or not having children. A woman could not divorce her husband. The balance of power was very one-sided. Yet even in this strict system, some women became strong in quiet ways. They passed down wisdom, managed households, and influence their sons who would one day lead families of their own. Let's look at how marriage worked in ancient Japan, a place where rules were built from tradition, not law. Unlike other countries, Japan didn't have one strict way of getting married. Marriage customs changed by region, family, and time, period. But one thing stayed the same: respect for nature, ancestors, and harmony. In Japan, the native religion was Shinto, which teaches that divine spirits, called kami, live in everything: rivers, trees, mountains, and people. Marriage was seen as a way to keep harmony between humans and the natural world. Early on, marriages were arranged by families. The goal wasn't love. It was alliances joining families together, keeping land and power in the right hands. But Japan was different from other places in one key way: women had more freedom. In ancient times, women could own land, run estates, and make household decisions. They had real power inside their homes. One common practice was mukoiri, where the groom moved into the bride's house. This was the opposite of what happened in places like China. It showed that women's families sometimes had more influence. Over time, this switched to yomiri, where the bride moved into the groom's home. As society became more patriarchal, marriage rituals focused on purity and symbolism, not on big parties or legal documents. One important tradition was the sansankyudo, or 339 times. The couple would take 3 sips from 3 cups of sake, 9 sips total. The first 3 were for the couple, the next 3 for their families, and the last 3 for their spirits. It was a sacred bond, even though there were no vows or priests. Divorce was possible in Japan. It was discouraged, but not forbidden. If a couple couldn't have children or didn't get along, they could quietly separate. What mattered most was keeping peace and respect for the family and for the ancestors. Now we turn to ancient Rome, where marriage was a powerful tool used by the state, the family, and the wealthy. In Rome, marriage was public, legal, and deeply tied to class and law. You didn't just get married, you entered a contract that shaped your identity. There were different types of marriage. The most traditional was called kamanu, meaning with hand. In this kind, the wife left her own family and became part of her husband's family. She was under his legal control. Everything she owned became his. But over time, a new type became more common, saimanu, meaning without hand. In this kind, the wife stayed legally tied to her own family. She kept control of her property. This showed that Roman women, especially rich ones, were gaining more independence. The Roman wedding ceremony was full of symbolism. The bride wore a bright orange veil called a flammu. Her hair was divided into 6 parts using a spear. This might sound strange, but it connected the marriage to Rome's early warrior traditions. The couple joined hands, a gesture called dextrarum and made offerings to household gods, especially Juno, the goddess of marriage. After the ceremony, the bride was led to her new home in a big public walk. At the door, she was welcomed with fire and water, symbols of warmth and life. Marriage among the Roman upper class was rarely about love. It was about alliances. Senators and nobles used marriages to form political deals. Even emperors often married for power, not for affection. But Roman women had rights, especially under the saimanu system. They could own property, inherit wealth, and even divorce their husbands. Divorce wasn't shameful. If a marriage didn't work, either person could end it by declaring their intent in front of witnesses. Sometimes, a marriage ended as easily as saying, "I'm done." But if the couple had kids or shared property, things could get messy. Marriage in Rome was a public role. You didn't just marry one person. You married into society, into its rules, its expectations, and its future. Now let's look at the traditions of the ancient Hebrews, whose marriage customs were guided by religious law and moral duty. Marriage wasn't just a social agreement. It was a sacred covenant, a holy promise blessed by God and respected by the whole community. In Hebrew life, marriage was required for fulfilling the commandment to be fruitful and multiply. Men were expected to marry young. Love wasn't the main reason, but it was welcome if it came. What mattered most was keeping the tribe strong, passing down inheritance, and following God's laws. Families arranged the marriages. They negotiated deals based on reputation, property, and bloodlines. The groom paid a bride price, called a moher, to the bride's family. This wasn't a purchase, but a sign of commitment and honor. It showed he was serious and ready to take responsibility. Girls married in their early teens. Boys waited until they could afford a home. Ceremonies were family events, usually held at the bride's house. There was singing, reading from holy texts, and lots of food. Wine was served to mark the joy of the occasion. A key part of the marriage was the ketubah, a written contract that listed the husband's responsibilities, food, clothing, and care. It also protected the wife if she was widowed or divorced. The contract ensured she wasn't left with nothing. While Hebrew society was patriarchal, women had an important role. The Bible describes a woman of valor, someone wise, kind, and strong. She ran the household and guided her family. With dignity, polygamy existed in early times. Some important men, like Abraham and Jacob, had multiple wives, but over time, monogamy became more common, especially after the exile in Babylon. Divorce was allowed, but only by the husband. He had to write a legal paper called a get. This wasn't done lightly, and it had to follow religious law. A man couldn't just abandon his wife. She needed the get to remarry and to be protected. Marriage in Hebrew life wasn't about emotions. It was about honor, duty, and obedience to God. But even within the rules, kindness and care were expected. Now we head to ancient Celtic lands, places like Ireland, Scotland, and Gaul. In these tribal societies, marriage was flexible, deeply spiritual, and tied to the natural world. Unlike the strict systems in Rome or China, Celtic marriage was more about choice, respect, and balance. A Celtic wedding wasn't just about the people. It was a bond between families, land, and the gods. The ceremony was often held outdoors, during seasonal festivals like Beltane, the fire festival of summer, and fertility. Couples would jump over flames or pass between bonfires to show their union was blessed by nature. Marriage could be monogamous or polygamous, depending on your status. A powerful man might have multiple wives, but each relationship had to be based on clear rules and mutual respect. Women had legal rights. They could own land, start divorce, and choose their husbands. In some tribes, couples had a trial marriage. They lived together for a year and a day. If it worked out, great. If not, they could part ways without shame. Marriage contracts often included agreements about property, inheritance, and duties. If a spouse was abusive or neglected their family, it could be grounds for separation. The focus was on partnership, not control. Celtic marriages were not about kings or law codes. They were about shared responsibility, spiritual connection, and staying in harmony with the world around you. Now let's jump far forward in time to medieval Europe. At one of the greatest castles ever built, Malbork Castle in what is now Poland. It started not as a royal palace, but as a base for warrior monks known as the Teutonic Knights. These knights were part soldier, part priest. They fought in the Crusades, but soon left the Holy Land and settled in northern Europe. They came to convert pagans and stay in power. In 1274, they began building Malbork, a massive red brick fortress on the Nugget River. Malbork was more than walls and towers. It was a symbol of faith and force. Inside, it had chapels, meeting halls, and rooms. For knights, every brick was laid with purpose. Even the bathrooms had smart designs. Waste was washed away by river water. The knights ruled like kings. They had their own laws, taxes, and armies. Malbork became the heart of their empire. But empires make enemies. In 1410, the combined forces of Poland and Lithuania defeated the knights at the Battle of Grunwald. Their grandmaster was killed. Their power shook, but Malbork didn't fall right away. It survived a siege. It stayed strong. Still, the order weakened. By 1457, the knights were so broke they sold the castle to the Polish king. Malbork became a royal residence. No blood, no battle, just money. Time moved on. The castle saw new rulers and new wars. In the 1600s, Sweden invaded Poland. Malbork fell again, this time with no defense. Soldiers looted treasures, broke walls, and left behind ruins. Then came the Prussians. They turned parts of the castle into warehouses and military barracks. They even tore down walls for building materials. The once great fortress faded into silence, but it never disappeared. In the 1800s, a wave of national pride brought new interest. In medieval history, architects began restoring Malbork. Some parts were rebuilt with care. Others were guessed or romanticized to look dramatic. Malbork became a museum of the past, especially for Germany. Then came World War II. The castle was bombed by Soviet forces. Fires destroyed much of what had been restored. But after the war, Poland reclaimed Malbork. They started rebuilding it again, this time with a focus on accuracy and care. Today, Malbork is the largest brick castle in the world. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, School groups visit. Historians study its walls. Tourists walk its courtyards, wondering how it survived centuries of war, fire, and politics. Malbork doesn't offend anymore. It remembers. Final thoughts. Threads that tie it all together, whether it's a geisha kneeling in a quiet room, a bride jumping over fire in Celtic lands, or a queen walking through castle gates. One thing connects all these stories: tradition, discipline, and quiet strength. Across thousands of years, cultures have built systems to guide marriage, power, and identity. In some places, women were symbols. In others, they were leaders. In some homes, love was a gift. In others, it wasn't expected at all. But in every culture, we see the tension between duty and desire, between public role and private self. The geisha who smiles through pain, the wife who carries the family legacy, the warrior bride who tells her husband to die with honor. These are stories of performance, survival, and elegance. And in the end, the quiet gestures matter most. The way a fan opens, the way a bow is held, the way someone walks without sound. Those moments last, because even when names are forgotten and buildings fall, traditions leave footprints in teacups, in old poems, in castle stones. And somewhere, a girl kneels on aching legs, smiles just enough, and carries all of it forward.